You see that right in the social media. I think
I don't know more than you do. MashaAllah, you know plenty. And you went through tragic situation in Syria where thousands of people got killed, innocent people got killed, and they are still getting killed, innocent people. And, there is not much we can do about it. So for the Middle East, there is always mu'amara. They are always apart,
yeah.
and they explain everything as with that theory of somebody is planning something behind our back, try to
Conspiracy.
conspiracy, trying to get his own agenda moving forward. And this is really part of our weakness in the Middle East. But here we are in the United States, and it is someone, an Anglo-Saxon, committing that crime against another Anglo-Saxon. And to me, we are a house divided in the United States at this time, and we need to unify. We need unification. We need reconciliation. We don't need people shooting each other, because that is bound to mess up the system that we think is much better than where we came from. So alhamdulillah, we'll try to speak against it everywhere we can.
I was praying that not from the Middle East or Muslim, anybody like that to do that action, not to hear that, but alhamdulillah anyway. It's an Anglo-Saxon white guy, Republican,
I'm happy for that that Trump did not get killed.
Yes.
For his own sake, I'm happy that for the sake of the country, in that I feared that if he did get killed, that there would be a lot of his followers who would resort to violence.
Yes.
And the third thing I'm thankful for, at least it appears that the gunman acted alone, that there was no hired gun or other people financing this guy. It may turn out that other way, but from what little I've heard so far, it sounds like one individual person and not a group of people.
I hope you're right, Hugh. I hope you're right. I pray that you're right, I should say. I see that Dr. Suhail is here with us.
Yes.
أهلا وسهلا.
جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Yes.
How do you feel about Trump being shot?
I don't know about this whole Trump thing is really a mess. I mean, we were in a bad situation and now it's even worse. Of course, this violence, nothing can justify it, this political violence under any name, religion, politics, anything. And of course, a crime, even if it was not politically driven, it's still crime. And so that's bad. There is no question about it. But as Hugh was mentioning, hopefully it's just one man initiative, and hopefully it does not trigger any reactions. I think the way the fact that Biden came out and spoke, that was a good idea, and talked to him. But this whole phenomena of Americans have to choose between Biden and Trump is not something that makes you happy or optimistic about where we are or where we're heading. I mean, it's the last election, Americans were in this situation. People were not very excited about Biden, but they ended up voting for him as like voting against Trump. So when do voters will have a chance to vote for somebody they like and they are convinced and they trust the candidate's competency and until when you have to vote, you go to vote just to vote against the other candidate, not for your candidate. And I don't know, as I said, situation was bad, and now it's even more complicated. So I don't know where it's going to. But something has to be done so that people will not find themselves in this situation again, because now almost twice in the row, Trump will not win against any other candidate. I mean, it's not president coming back, and it's not a lot of question mark around about him, etc. So to the point that you have a president like Biden who's really frail and age had a lot of impact, and still he's competitive with Trump and still has a chance. To tell you that other than his people, majority of Americans and American voters, and especially those who are not committed, those who really determine the outcome of the election, because there are people who are going to vote Democrat anyway. There are people who are going to vote Republican anyway for the Republican candidate, regardless of who he is. But there are people who are not committed, and these they either choose to stay home or vote for a third candidate, and that's their decision determines the outcome of the election all the time. And these people are right now, they're not voting for Trump, and they are not very excited or motivated to vote for Biden either. So they are in limbo, and they are in a bind. And again, it's not a good sign that this great country is unable to produce great candidates from whom the voters will have a chance to vote, to choose people with charisma, people with credibility, people with that it will like mobilize young voters, mobilize the voters who usually may not even vote. That's I think that should be the focus of the discussion and planning in the future, on how to avoid this situation and how to have a mechanism that will produce even in the primary will produce candidates who motivate people to vote, and then especially after the primaries are done, that will be real contrast of ideas and candidates who are capable of articulating those ideas. We don't see that now. See people just accusing and cursing each other, and there are no substances.
So you're not excited about it?
About what? About the election?
Yep.
It's terrible. I mean, it's a terrible situation to have to choose between these two candidates who belong to the past, actually. I mean,
dinosaurs.
America should have really candidates in their 40s and 50s and maybe 60s. But I mean, there shouldn't be this situation here. I mean, if Republicans had managed to produce a good candidate, Trump would not come back. If the Democrat, not only this time, I mean, even the previous time, I mean, Biden barely made it, but I don't think he was the best candidate to have. So I really don't know how it's going to happen, but I wish one day there will be two convincing candidates with clear contrast in their platforms, who will articulate that away from the empty promises that everybody is going to solve all the problems if they get elected. That's what we hear, unfortunately, every election. And candidates telling the public what they want to hear and going by the polls. What do people want to hear? And that's what they would say in their speeches and rallies. That's not healthy politics. I mean, healthy politics is when you have candidates who have platform and they articulate those platforms and then accept the decision of the population or the public or the voters. But having people polling all the time and just to find out what people want to hear and say it in your speeches and rallies, and then give those empty promises that will never be materialized, that all will alienate people from politics, because they will see it that is just propaganda and lying and promises that will never be fulfilled. So people will not be motivated to be involved or to vote or to even follow what's going on.
Dr. Suhail, there are 60 million people in the United States who will vote for Trump regardless what happens. And those people, I heard from some of them this morning, they're saying being shot in the ear is an indication, and they're trying to tie that to biblical incidents. And they're saying it's a sign of God. I'm telling you I mean, this is what they're saying. And they believe in that. And they think this is God telling them something. So it's biblical that he's going to make it next time. Brother Hugh, do you have any comment on this? Does the Bible?
I do. I would take it from a different tack. I think, as Dr. Suhail was talking about, I think there are two things that have changed in the last 30 years that have really changed the mechanism of how we choose our candidates. And I think the first one was in 1994 when Newt Gingrich and the Republicans took over Congress, and they did it by a scorched earth policy. It wasn't a statesmanlike discussions and so forth. And that brought in the idea of let's win at all costs. It doesn't matter what we do. And then I think the second thing that happened that really exacerbated that was the rise of social media. And there's nobody, there's no moral check on the social media. We used to go through the political parties. We used to go through newspapers and other newspaper radio stations and people who had morals, who had ethics. And so we've lost that. And so my hope is that we're going through a rough time now, but I hope that with the flexibility of the system in the United States, that we are able to respond and come up with ways of dealing with these two issues, particularly what Dr. Ghannouchi was saying in terms of how we can do a better job of selecting more appropriate candidates.
Indeed.
Yeah, I think this
being shot in the ear.
Yeah, it should. Oh, yeah.
Does it have any biblical indications as far as you know? Apparently not.
The only one that I can think of is when Jesus was arrested the night before he was killed.
Yes.
There was the Apostle Peter apparently took a sword and cut off one of the attendant's ears, swung a sword, and Jesus responded to that. But I don't think that happened to Jesus himself. But no. Legend has it that Jesus healed that individual's ear.
Yeah.
This reminds me of when we had the Al Gore and George W. Bush. The Al Gore said, because Bush, I think, came out and said that God talked to him. So Al Gore said, we are witnessing big change in this country. We used to have an election like my opinion versus your opinion, and now somebody is saying that God is talking to him. How can we respond to that? So, yeah. Unfortunately, the abuse of religion in politics it's done by all religion. It's not, it's usually a desperate move and appealing to the masses who really are not into looking into platforms or agenda, play on their emotions and just invoke the religious card. And it's done by Muslims also, by Islamic parties. It's done everywhere.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
As much as I'm in agreement of like nobody should kill anybody, I'm gonna go more like further a little bit with like the theories that is happening based on like Brother Bassem said, like how they assume. It truthfully, like we cannot call people or the media in the Middle East as ignorant, because they were in the spot in too many different ways. And there is some other aspects of what's happening, and it's like what we're talking about now is like what Dr. Safi just raised is one thing, but it's like we cannot deny history, and there is lots of events that was used for political games historically. It's like Israelis killed Jewish people coming in, and Israelis bombed ships in the Mediterranean. And there's other things. It's like what's happening at the bombing of different areas in Gaza just to kill the hostages and not to get rid. So they get rid of that problem. So there is a lot of problems that can be gained politically from doing such a thing. I'm against it. I'm not for it. But there is some groups, as we're talking now, some groups that get benefit or use it in their benefit to raise some ideological, whatever, political, whatever else ideas and theories. And we should not like ignore it or deny it, because it's obviously, we're talking about it, it's facts. It's ignorance, yes, but a lot of people are naive and they don't take it. They take it as it is. They don't think about it and who's benefiting from this to happen, and who's the cause of it, and why it happened. It could be, as you guys said, and again, I just heard about this early morning, but it could be individual, or it could be a group, it could be a different country who's benefiting somebody else. And you guys talking about the religious, it's like Netanyahu is the king in Israel today. And having a president like President Trump, or having a Trump winning elections and becoming the first president winning elections twice in this country, or coming back, it's really an interesting aspect of all of these behaviors and theories, as we would say. I don't know how you guys think about it. Thank you.
I think what this whole idea of conspiracy can be summarized. I like it was summarized by somebody, I don't remember the name, say there is conspiracy in politics, but politics is not all conspiracy. There is conspiracy, definitely, international, domestic, etc. But to explain everything with conspiracy, that's the wrong thing to do. That's one thing. Second is this idea of conspiracy, when it is abused, this conspiracy theory, it becomes justification of failure and the blame game. That I'm a victim of a conspiracy, so you cannot blame me. If I fail, it's because of others, not because of me. That's the bad thing about it. And by the way, that runs against the Islamic approach. The Islamic approach is very clear, and it's a lesson that we are yet to learn, that you only have yourself to blame if anything goes wrong. Quran is explicit about it and mentioned in several places. قُلْ هُوَ مِنْ عِنْدِ أَنفُسِكُمْ. It is the work of your own hands. فَبِمَا كَسَبَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ. It is the result of what you have done or you failed to do. So I strongly believe in that approach, because all other approaches will lead us nowhere. It may make you feel, all of them, they make you feel good, by the way. Starting with denial, you tell somebody that you have a crisis, whether it is health crisis, family, whatever, and they say, no, I'm okay. Yeah, you can choose to do that, but the problem is going to get worse. If it is a health problem and you choose to deny it, it's going to get more complicated. Any other problem, personal, political, social, whatever. Conspiracy makes you feel very good, makes you feel comfortable, because this victimization is really very comfortable, because it takes the blame out of you and the guilt feeling. It's not because of me, it's because of somebody else has done it to me. Excuses, finding excuse for any failure, whether it is divine destiny, whether it is trial and tribulation, whether it is, you remember the typical example that we use all the time is a lot of time those national soccer teams, when they lose, the commentators or even the coaching staff or whatever, they come up with all the excuses. The pitch was not in good shape. The weather was humid. It was hot. The hotel was not really very comfortable. This and that and the other. It's but they just don't want to say that we had a bad team or a bad day for our team. I think we really need to adopt that Islamic approach in our personal life and in politics and in social, everything, everywhere. That the first thing that you need to do is to look inside, not around. And yes, if there is a conspiracy, that still is not going to take you off the hook, because then there is a question why they conspire against you. It is because you are weak. So the problem becomes why you are weak and how you can build yourself in a way that you become resistant or hard to conspire against, rather than choosing the other path. So I'm really strongly advocate for the taking charge for what happens to us, accepting responsibility, and then accepting responsibility to change it and close all other doors that, like the painkiller, it makes you more comfortable, but it does not solve the problem. And again, that's the right Islamic approach is to, and that's even at all levels. I see time and again, even in our families, in the community, so many problems happens between spouses because of insisting on blaming and exonerating yourself. It's not my fault, it's yours. It's and then they argue and waste a lot of time rather than focusing on understanding the root cause of the problem and solving it. They waste their time arguing whom to blame, who is at fault.
For one thing, silence means everybody approve what you just said, if they like it. Now we need to move forward, please. Any other questions?
There must be somebody who's gaining from what's happening. So how we can determine that?
But how it's going to benefit
I'm
us?
not trying to believe in conspiracy here, but like everything is happening for a cause. Like years ago, and this is just an example. Again, it's totally different, but this is just an example. checkpoints in the West Bank. We started with 1, 2, 3. Now they are hundreds. They're dividing the whole West Bank and Gaza into islands. Years ago, we were talking about like the effects of those, side effects of those, how they're gonna divide the whole area into islands, how we gonna become more like a tribal land, and they're gonna make it more like a tribal, or you take this region and you work with it, and I'm gonna recognize you as a state or not recognize you as a state. I'm gonna deal with you, or I'm gonna give you some food, or I'm gonna give you an interest today, or maybe serve you with water. So smart people who looked at this, in my opinion, smart people who looked at this as an example of has some future effects that gonna destroy the community. It's gonna discharge. It's like it's gonna disconnect the communities from each other. It's gonna build different aspect of living. It's like you cannot travel to Ramallah to work, so you have to find a way to work either in the Israeli areas or in my areas. You cannot get water unless I give you water. You cannot get electricity until I give you electricity. These people who thought about these disconnects, about even marriage, you cannot get married from somebody from the Jerusalem area because you cannot get to the bride in the wedding day to get her back to your village because the Israelis checkpoints are closed. My point in here is, like, nothing happened for nothing or from nothing. If the Bible or the Quran mentions something and somebody believes it in the wrong way, you're absolutely right. It's going to become a conspiracy. But there is certain things and changes, and there is like other theories that people might throw out, and some crazy people might take them. But there are certain things, as you're saying, like it's part of developments. Like when we do 5 years of plan, it's like the 5 years plan is supposed to help growth. I don't know. This is not conspiracy. This is projections based on numbers and data. Things happened for a reason. If Netanyahu wants to win elections again and stay in space, and again, it's like we're going back to, maybe this will help somebody like Biden to win the elections with no question. He was winning the elections without anything, but could help him even faster and without any, give him more votes, regardless to what, because people are sympathetic. And I am sympathetic for what happened to him. It's like nobody deserved to get killed just like that. But again, it's like if somebody's benefiting from this or from the outside, it needs to be looked at. And it happened before. So I agree that not everything is conspiracy. But again, somehow there is some kind of like logic, like there is a logic that we need to play in here to analyze historical data, current data, and what's happening of how things are in play.
Yeah, I mean, and discussing who is benefiting from any act is not a bad idea. The problem is how much time and effort you put on the who compared to on the why. I believe that in our discussion, this idea of who might have done this and who may be benefiting from should take a small part of our time and our efforts. And the bulk of our time and our effort should be directed to why anything happened and what can we do about it. That's not the case nowadays in Muslims gatherings and meetings. That's not the case. We love to talk about things that are not consequential. They have no impact. There is no action needed. And then conspiracy is one of them. You can sit in a meeting or gathering of people, social gathering, and they can be talking about all issues. They open one file after the other, but it's all empty talk, descriptive, complaining, blaming maybe, but they don't even get to the question of why this has happened and what can we do about it in the short term as immediate action, and in the long term as addressing the root cause of the problem. And that's, I think, the change in our mindset that should happen. That anytime we discuss an issue, we should not spend a lot of time or energy on describing, because everybody almost knows what's going on, the news. There is no point in description. And we should not take that route of complaining or blaming. We should immediately put that hard questions on the table. Why this happened to Syria? Why this happened to Palestine? Why this happened here? Why this happened there? Why? And what is it that can be done about it? Especially from your angle. I mean, don't worry about other people, what they can do. Everybody is responsible for whatever Allah put them, and whatever resources Allah gave you. You are here. What is it that you can do? One, to immediately alleviate, for example, the suffering of people in Gaza, to maybe stop or to secure or get the ceasefire. And what is it that you can do in the long run? That's probably much better than just spending hours and hours and hours venting out anger and talking about issues but doing nothing about it. Unfortunately, a lot of people, they call that politics. They think that they're involved in politics. Why? Because they spend I don't know how many hours a day between, some of them watching TV, following social media, and then attending those meetings where they keep talking about those issues. And then at the end of the day, they think they are involved, they are engaged, because they spend all of that time watching and following what's going on. They don't know that passive involvement is worthless.
I do agree. And I'm just going to summarize it just so I can repeat it again, because I really think what he just said is really important. We spend a lot of time wasting our time than trying to resolve the issue. We waste our time in secondary and third level issues and not thinking about the most important issue. Is that kind of summarize what you said?
Yeah, I mean, the most important issue is to get to the bottom of it, which is like any good physician will do. There is no treatment without diagnosis. The description, a lot of people, they confuse between the description and diagnosis. That's why when you say we need to diagnose the problem, they say we all know the diagnosis. Let's not waste time on it. No, that's not true. We all know the story, not the root, not the causes. There is a big difference between knowing what's happening and knowing why it is happening. So I get this all the time. Anytime I said we need to understand, properly diagnose the problem or understand the root cause of the crisis or whatever, everybody will say, no. This is very well known. Everybody knows the diagnosis. We need solutions. I say that's not true. That's not true. We have a lot of, for a number of crises, we have very superficial understanding of the problem. And that's why our action is not making difference, because we are not treating the root cause of the problem. That's what people distinguish between the two. If you spend, I don't know how many hours a day following the news, whether on TV or on social media, it doesn't make you somebody who's aware. Because all of these, a lot of time is repetition of the same stories, same, etc., and analysis, etc. And then at the end of the day, you come out empty-handed. You did nothing. That's why they said somebody said about religion that it can become an opium. Politics also can be a fuel, opium. Politics nowadays, in many, especially in a lot of Muslim countries and societies and communities, it became an opium. It's making people, they are addicted to spending all that time passively watching and talking about things, but without doing anything about it, or without doing anything that makes difference, because there is some activism, but it's an empty, purposeless activism. It's makes you feel good because you met with the public officials, you took some pictures, you did the press conference here, you issued the press release there, but people don't ask themselves, what's the outcome, what's the target, and how much of it we achieved with this, or we're going to achieve if we're going to continue doing business the same way. And if you don't have a target or a vision to begin with, then you can call anything success. Then you will start measuring, confusing between achievements and activities. Then you will consider that having a bigger mosque or having more activities and more people attending them, that's a success. Why? Because you did not even start with a vision or a target or goal or performance indicators. You didn't. So you can call anything success. And that's why a lot of governments in the Muslim world, the first time they come, their first speech is that, you know, situation is extremely bad. We inherited a very heavy burden, tarika, thaqila. Why? Because they're justifying failure from the beginning. They're telling you that if we're going to fail, you already know why. We already told you that because we inherited extremely bad situation. When we're repeating it even here, I mean, do you see like in mosques people running for election with visions and try to convince others? That's if you have an election, a fair and open election. Some mosques it's controlled by one individual or controlled by one group, or again, it's like Muslim countries. In the constitution, it's very, very democratic. And then in reality, the reality is something else.
Dr. Suhail, I have a different question. If nobody has any other questions regarding to what we're talking about. Sure. And my question is, I really found out just recently that Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, Khalifa, the third Khalifa, he was one of the immigrants in Ethiopia or during the time. Did he move to, do you have an idea if he was one of the, with the first group, the second group that followed, and how long that happened, and if there is any indications of what's the benefits of that during the time? Is it just like everybody else who moved from Mecca, or there was other reasons?
I don't know about Uthman ibn Affan in particular, his migration to Abyssinia and first time or second, and how much time he spent. But what I know is that the whole idea of that migration, and that's what they mentioned this Jumu'ah. The whole idea of migration shows the type of leadership that the Rasul had, or performed. Rasul at certain point in time, he was worried about his whole movement and message will be buried in Mecca or exterminated. And as a great leader with a great vision, he wanted to have to put the mechanism so that even if that happens, it will continue. His message will continue and his mission will continue. So what I'm reading here, I just looked up quickly that he migrated to Habasha, Abyssinia, but he came back to Mecca and then migrated to Medina. So didn't go straight from Abyssinia to Medina. It shows again the type of leadership that Rasul had, sending people, and these people he did not even send the weakest. That tells you also that there was a real vision behind it. He sent some of the leaders who were not really tortured in Mecca. I mean, who's going to torture Uthman ibn Affan at that time, or even Ja'far ibn Abi Talib? And these are from very prominent families, and nobody can come close to them. But he had that in mind as he was working in parallel, looking for an alternative base for his movement, approaching the tribes during the Hajj season. We're going to Taif city near Mecca to see if they accept to host him and his movement and his message. It's an amazing story. The life of the Prophet, if it is read as a social movement of change, it was really an amazing case of leadership and visionary leadership. So that's probably part of the reason, because he did not tell people who migrated to Abyssinia, Habasha, to come back only after he settled in Medina. After things settled in Medina, he sent them a message to come and join him. So it's really the planning, the strategy of the Prophet of engaging, engaging his environment and always securing his base and engaging the environment, starting from Mecca, when his base was his family and the small number of people who joined him, the core group, and engaging the people of Mecca by those debates and discussion, and then when he migrated to the Medina, that became his base, and he engaged his environment. Both in Medina, there was a lot of debates happened in Medina that Quran tells us about them, and then engaging the larger environment, because at that time there was no, it's like jungle. There was no international law or anything. Might make it right. So a lot of tribes, they thought about taking advantage of that situation of transition that the Medina was in, to attack it. So he had kept sending expeditions to different places, not to fight, but to gather human intelligence and to show, to deter those tribes from attacking the Medina. A lot of work was done, even economically, in Medina to establish some economy for that emerging community. And then, of course, the great constitution that he wrote, which I believe one of probably the earliest, if not the earliest state that was established based on constitution and citizenship. If you read the one page that the Prophet has wrote as the constitution of the Medina, it was very clear that people are all citizens and they're going to be treated as citizens, guaranteed freedom of conscience and organizing for all those sub-communities. Something that was very, very progressive and very advanced. And it was the social contract. It was a social contract. Basically, that's what is gathering us together. And that happened at a time and area where the only mechanism or way of organizing was either tribal or maybe ethnicity. But this is the first time that no, it's not about tribe, it's not about religion, it's about citizens of the same city of the Medina. They have equal rights and they have those guaranteed rights.
May I add something to what you just said, please?
Sure.
This wasn't a social contract only. It was the first social contract in history.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one article in that contract, نحن أمة دون الأمم. We are a nation among nations. So loyalty, after that constitution, stopped being to the tribe and started being to the nation. And that's a major move forward for those Arabs who grew up as tribal people who were killing each other all the time and thinking that killing members of other tribe is a virtue. Now they know their real loyalty is to that new states, and they are all equal in that state. By the way, that what that constitution, what that social contract called Ummah, included Muslims, Jews, and idol worshippers also. Please look it up. Everybody should look it up and see it in any language they want. It's available on Google with all languages. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair. Very good addition.
You want me to add something else?
Sure.
Yathrib was called Medina because the law there was civil. It's from Qanun al-Madani. Medina wasn't the name of Yathrib wasn't changed to Medina because it's Medina al-Rasul like they taught us, but because the law that was dominant based on that constitution was a civil law, not a religious law. Worth mentioning.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Said, and we'll see you next Sunday, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.